Good morning, one and all.
Good morning.
Welcome on this day before spring. We will let the snow last, and it's going to disappear tonight. Yes, and that little bud that I have growing up on my foundation, a little green bud of something, yeah, it's going to continue to grow. Do you remember school yearbooks?
Yes.
Did anyone ever write in someone else's book the most least likely to succeed?
No.
People like Robin Williams, Dustin Hoffman, Dr. Seuss, Tom Cruise were all the subject of this kind of what proved to be poor judgment, because they were all very successful. That's not to say, though, that their paths were easy on their way to the top. They had their giants to slay, and they may have left some unslain. But what does it mean to be successful? To have fame, monetary wealth, big house, a position in the community, to hold power, to have control over others, over resources? Or does it mean respect of others, a desire to help others, to make and keep friends easily, to have a desire to learn and then share your knowledge, to encourage rather than criticize? Do you know anyone who has succeeded beyond the expectations of others, but who was told that they would never be able to? Do you know anybody like that? Yeah.
Yes, I knew of one.
Yeah.
I just remembered. He's in Southern Ontario. Teacher asked his father to take him out of school because he was in grade 8 for 2 years and he wasn't going anywhere. And he became a very successful tile grain and well driller. Absolutely successful.
Yeah. Yeah. Do we ever feel as if we'd never succeed? Were there ever moments when we doubted even ourselves? Something to think about as we pass over all of our worries and to seek a moment of peace in this place. Let us sing. When we pass through the waters,
God is there with us.
when we suffer and feel hopeless,
God is there with us.
when we are joyful and celebratory,
God is there with us.
whether we feel triumphant or defeated,
God is there with us always.
so come and let us worship together with Emmanuel, God with us, and let us begin singing.
Praises we sing.
shepherd. You know us by our names. You care for us with no reservations. When we face darkness and death, remind us that you walk beside us. When we hunger for your love, assure us that you fill us with your presence. When we're fearful, remind us that you have laid a table where everything we could possibly need is there for our use. As we dwell in your house of goodness and mercy on any day, wherever it may be found, never let us out of your sight. And to these pleas we add the words that we were given that bind us together as one community of faith. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Have you ever prayed with a little bit of doubt in your voice, in your words? When things just don't seem to be going the way that you want? Have you ever wondered if God's gone on a vacation? Or turned off the divine computer, like in that movie, Bruce Almighty? You know, when he becomes God, and all those prayers are in the computer, and finally just gives up and turns it off. Well, sometimes I wonder if we think that way, that God just wants to get away from all these silly requests that we make. The silly requests like for things, rather than qualities that we want. Do we want to just take a pass on praying, because it seems like a useless activity? I imagine there are lots of people that feel as if their prayers haven't been answered, and they drop the conversation, at least at their end. But maybe they came to it with requests that were just too specific, not within the realm of possibility, and they give up. But I love this, I don't know what you call it. What is it? It comes from the Church of Christ down in the States, and they developed this little saying, this little logo. And this is a congregation that we are, the United Church is a fellow, we have a reciprocal agreement with them. And we can go down there and serve, and they can come up here and serve our churches. But I think it's a wonderful slide, because it reminds us that God continues to talk. We just perhaps need to listen and trust that we will be given what we truly need and when we need it. And know that more often than not, it's not going to be about the things that we want. It'll be the character-enhancing qualities that we need that are going to help us through those hurdles, to face those giants, and the assurance, of course, that someone's walking with us. This is a reading that I found. It incorporates two Psalms, Psalm 13 and Psalm 23. And they reflect how on certain days we can address God with different attitudes, at least until they find a resolve unto the last verse. So please join with me. Oh Lord, how long will you forget me? Forever? How long will you look the other way?
The Lord is my shepherd. I have everything I need. He lets me rest in green meadows. He leads me beside peaceful streams.
How long must I struggle with anguish in my soul, the sorrow in my heart every day?
He restores my soul. He guides me along paths of righteousness for the sake of his good name.
How long will my enemy have the upper hand? Turn and answer me, O Lord my God. Restore the sight in my eyes, or I will die.
Even when I walk through the dark valley of death, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me. Your rod and your staff protect and comfort me.
Do not let my enemies gloat, saying, we have defeated him. Don't let them rejoice at my downfall.
You prepare a feast for me, right in front of my enemies. You welcome me as a guest, anointing my head with oil. My cup overflows with blessings.
But I trust in your unfailing love. I will rejoice because you have rescued me, and I will sing to the Lord because he has been so good to me.
Surely your goodness and unfailing love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever.
And may we all feel as if we have the attention of the one who holds us in the palm of his hand. Let us sing. So this is where one of the most popular Sunday school stories actually begins. It's about the choosing and the anointing of the man who would be the next king after Saul. And the reason that this process is starting now, while Saul is still on the throne, is that he did not do as God commanded. He was supposed to attack the Amalekites and totally destroy everything that belonged to them. God said, do not spare them. Put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle, sheep, and donkeys. This was God's command. Very specific. The trouble was that Saul spared the king and the best of his animals. Greed lets you do these things. But God was ticked off and got Samuel, who we might think of as being Saul's handler, to deliver the news to him. Plans were in the works to find his successor. The thing is that Saul wanted to retain his reputation with his people and with Israel while all this was happening. He didn't want them to think that he was on his way out. So he asked Samuel to worship God with him before the people to make it look as if everything was copacetic. The odd twist to this story is that Samuel, Saul's handler, ended up killing the king whom Saul had spared. Samuel accused him of doing exactly what God had got Saul to do. That was the wanton killing of the innocent, of Saul's people, though, in the recent past. In our eyes today, would this be justified? This tit for tat? An eye for an eye? Is this why some people question a commitment to a God who would demand this, the slaughter of the innocents. Is this the God we know in the New Testament? Let's listen to the story that follows.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to read the 1 Samuel, chapter 16, verses 1 to 3. God addressed Samuel. So how long are you going to mope over Saul? You know I rejected him as king over Israel. Fill your flask with anointing oil and get going. I'm sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem. I spotted the very king I want among his sons. I can't do that, said Samuel. Saul will hear about it and kill me. God said, take a heifer with you and announce, I've come to lead you in worship of God, with this heifer as a sacrifice. Make sure Jesse gets invited. I'll let you know what to do next. I'll point out the one you are to anoint. So Samuel did what God told him. When he arrived in Bethlehem, the town fathers greeted him, but apprehensively. Is there something wrong? Nothing's wrong. I've come to sacrifice this heifer and lead you in the worship of God. Prepare yourselves, be consecrated, and join me in worship. He made sure Jesse and his sons were also consecrated and called to worship. When they arrived, Samuel took one look at Eliab and thought, here he is, God's anointed. But God told Samuel, looks aren't everything. Don't be impressed with his looks and stature. I've already eliminated him. God judges persons differently than humans do. Men and women look at the face, but God looks at the heart. Jesse then called to Abinadab and presented him to Samuel. Samuel said, this man isn't God's choice either. Next, Jesse presented Shammah. Samuel said, no, this man isn't the one either. Jesse presented his 7 sons to Samuel. Samuel was blunt with Jesse. God hasn't chosen any of these. Then he asked Jesse, is this it? Are there no more sons? Well, yes, there's the runt, but he's out tending the sheep. Samuel ordered Jesse, go get him. We're not moving from this spot until he's here. So Jesse sent for him. He was brought in, the very picture of health, bright-eyed, good-looking. God said, up on your feet, anoint him. This is the one. Samuel took his flask of oil and anointed him. With his brothers standing around watching, the Spirit of God entered David like a rush of wind. God vitally empowered him for the rest of his life. May the story have treasured hold on new insights that would help us defeat any giants that we face today.
What an honor to have one of your children considered for kingship by God. I mean, aren't all of us proud when one of our children gets a promotion, does very well? I wonder if Jesse prepped them for when they would be prepared or paraded before Samuel. Something like the ugly stepsisters in Cinderella, being coached by their mom, what they were going to wear to the ball, what they were going to say, how they were going to act. Anyway, the boys were all lined up. I expect they were all hopeful, all buffed up, their military duds all spit and polished, trying their best to look regal and authoritative. Most of us would be no different if we were up for a new job. We'd try to exude confidence, dressed up in our most official job-suited attire. Hair suitably coiffed, makeup perfect, a fresh shave, although maybe that's not so important with stubble being the thing these days. But these aren't the things, apparently, that God considers important. Looks aren't everything, God said. So I guess all the sons were lacking in some way, because not one of them was chosen. God had to ask if there were other sons. So I wonder why Jesse didn't include David in the lineup. I mean, if God asked me or you to do something, I hope that we do exactly as we had been asked, even if it meant leaving the sheep unattended or a loaf of bread rising on the counter. I mean, we're told that God can see everything. Maybe Jesse was trying to second guess God about who would be appropriate. Something like the stepmother excluding Cinderella when the prince turned up with the glass slipper. She wanted one of her lovely daughters to be chosen. Maybe Jesse thought that way too. We can almost hear him replying to God in a rather dismissive voice. Well, you know what, there's the youngest. He's just the runt, just a shepherd. Not even worthy of your notice, God. I love that they were admonished to wait. In another translation, it says wait to eat until he arrived. Perhaps they were already being given an advanced sign of who he was to become, and that they were to begin preparing to honor him already. Now, when David arrives, he too is said to be the very picture of health and bright-eyed and good-looking. So what separated him from his brothers? Was it just his age and inexperience that put him out of the running in his dad's eyes? The other brothers weren't out in the pastures doing the dirty job of a shepherd. They had more important jobs, responsibilities, soldiering being one of them, that would have prepared them for the leadership role. Shepherding was such a lowly job that it couldn't possibly prepare someone to be called by God to be a king. There was a dad who decided that he was going to coach his daughter's basketball team. And they were part of the National Junior League, mostly 12-year-olds. And they were the daughters of nerds and computer programmers. They liked to work on science projects, read long, complicated books, and dreamed about growing up to be marine biologists. They were the least suited girls to take control of a basketball court. And their coach was also an underdog, a misfit, who felt more comfortable on a cricket or a soccer field. So what did he see in these unsuitable girls in his own lack of coaching experience? Unrecognized possibilities? Hope that in challenging them to develop skills that would serve them well when life could place giants in front of them later in life, that they would be able to cope better? Anyway, surprisingly, they did well at the finals, far beyond theirs or anyone else's imagination. They didn't win the overall title, but they were able to prove that they could deal with many of the giants they met during the tournament, the biggest one being their own self-confidence. This was also the case with the Impressionist painters back in the mid-1800s. This was a group of men, usually men. They were new to the world of art. They were scoffed at, belittled by the critics. They were often starving. Their works didn't qualify for the juried salon exhibition in Paris. If they dared to enter any painting, it was often stamped with a big red R, which meant rejected. So they got together. Monet, Cézanne, Renoir, the outcasts. And a long story short, they put together their own exhibition to which everybody was invited. And they were successful because in many ways they painted about everyday life, something that attracted everyone. And with their successes, they slew the giants, the obstacles, the stuffy traditionalists who had prevented them from providing humanity with a whole new way of seeing the world. And the rest is history. Their paintings hang in every major art museum in the world, and they are adored. So let's hear about David and his giant. This is from 1 Samuel 17. A giant nearly 10 feet tall stepped out from the Palestine line into the open, Goliath from Gath. And he had a bronze helmet on his head and was dressed in armor, 126 pounds of it. And he wore bronze shin guards and carried a bronze sword. His spear was like a fence rail. The spear tip alone weighed over 15 pounds. His shield bearer walked ahead of him. And then Saul outfitted David as a soldier in armor. He put his bronze helmet on his head and belted his sword on him over the armor. Poor David tried to walk, but he could hardly budge. David told Saul, "I can't even move with all this stuff on me. I'm not used to it." And he took it off. Then David took his shepherd's staff, selected 5 smooth stones from the brook, and put them in the pocket of his shepherd's pack, and with his sling in his hand approached Goliath. As the Philistine paced back and forth, his shield bearer in front of him, he noticed David. And he took one look down at him and sneered, "A mere boy, apple-cheeked and peach-fuzzed." The Philistine ridiculed David. "Am I a dog that you come after me with a stick?" And he cursed him by his gods. "Come on," said the Philistine, "I'll make roadkill of you for the buzzards. I'll turn you into a tasty morsel for the field mice." David answered, "You come to me with a sword and spear and battle axe. I come to you in the name of the God of the angel armies, the God of Israel's troops whom you curse and mock. This very day God is handing you over to me. I'm about to kill you, cut off your head, and serve up your body and the bodies of your Philistine buddies to the crows and coyotes. The whole earth will know that there's an extraordinary God in Israel, and everyone here will learn that God doesn't save by means of a sword or a spear. The battle belongs to God. He's handing you to us on a platter." That roused the Philistine, and he started towards David. And David took off from the front line, running towards the Philistine. And he reached into his pocket for a stone, slung it, and hit the Philistine right in the forehead, embedding the stone deeply. The Philistine crashed face down in the dirt. That's how David beat the Philistine, with a sling and a stone. He hit him and killed him. No sword for David. He did good, didn't he? Against all the odds, just like the girls' basketball team, just like Cinderella and the Impressionist painters, and it was so easy. Do we know why? In part, it was his own skill. You know, out there in the fields, tending his sheep, he had to scare away the predators. And so he had a lot of practice at it with his deadly sling or anything at hand that could give him the edge. But it was also because Goliath was so full of himself and his role. He packed on so much armor that in the end he could barely move, let alone defend himself against a bunny rabbit. I mean, at hand, David just had 5 smooth stones to defeat this giant. No massive army, no fancy weaponry, no impenetrable armor. Just a young teenager with a whole lot of faith in an awesome God. And the fact that Goliath was not as indomitable as he thought he was. In fact, he was just a sitting target. Do we ever feel as if we're facing a serious battle with a formidable opponent like Goliath? Do we ever feel small and weak and useless, lacking in gifts to achieve a task? What giants are intimidating or threatening any of us today or those we love? Do we believe that we can defeat the one before us like David, or are we like the girls on that basketball team who were able to deal with some of them on their journey to the end game? Are we pleased, content with our successes, even though we haven't been able to defeat all of our giants? Or unlike David's story, instead of trying to defeat them all, are we just able to walk away from them, not even giving them a second glance because they're not worth the attention, our time, or our energy, because in reality we won't be better off for it? But when we do need to deal with them, do we know that just like David, there are 5 stones that we can use to defeat the giants in our lives? 5 small stones. We might not even have to use them all, but they're available. So what are they? Commitment. Once David knew the lay of the land, he was committed to do something. Took him a few tries to figure out his plan, but he didn't just talk about it, whine about it, complain about it. He was just faithful to facing the problem directly. No one can accuse David of lacking in the courage department, can they? It's a second stone. We need to understand that courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the ability to act despite fear. Hopefully the lesson for us is that we too can let our faith be bigger than our fears. David did not just fight with stones, he used words. He communicated. He exposed the lies and the insults of Goliath and confronted them with the truth. He fought with the strength of God behind him, and he wasn't afraid to tell his enemy of his confidence in this. It's about stepping out bravely and confronting the giant with words, yes, with physical confrontation, maybe, but also knowing that we have someone guarding our backs. He may have been young and inexperienced as a soldier, but David had some pretty clear skills, didn't he? And he used them with confidence. Last stone. He fought off both lions and bears with only a club, his sling, and even his bare hands. Instead of focusing on what he lacked, David highlighted what he could bring to any fight, and now it was one with a giant. Your giant, my giant, may seem to be bigger, stronger, and smarter than we are, but so what? Though it may not seem so at first, we are capable too. We just need to ask God to show us what we have instead of worrying about what we don't have. If we believe that we're limited in our strength, our strategy, our skills, and believe them to be our only help to defeat the giants in our lives, we may still end up fearful, anxious, and unsure. I know that some of you have found that prayer has helped you deal with the giants you have faced. You and David are courageously confident, for sure. But it's always a good feeling to know that it's even one better than that. There's someone actually walking beside us, readjusting our armor when needed as the battle takes place. Like David, we have 5 smooth stones: communication, courage, commitment, capability, and confidence to go out and face whatever giants are placed in our way, perhaps even in this week ahead. Somebody suggested that it took only 1 stone to bring down the mighty Goliath. I beg to differ. In some way, all 5 played a part in David's successful mission, and they will with ours too. We need to draw on all our resources, and when we don't think we have the ones needed, we need to pray about it. Be confident that they will be provided. A little guy with what appears to be no chance meets a big guy with every advantage, but the little guy wins. Cue the cheers and the applause. Yay, the crowd goes wild. This is a universal plot, and it's used in countless movies, from dramas to romance, and we eat it up every time. Who doesn't love to root for the underdog? Underdogs win all the time. Though why then are we shocked every time a David beats a Goliath? Why do we automatically assume that someone who's smaller or poorer or less skilled is necessarily at a disadvantage? Out of the lion's den for Daniel, the prison for Peter, the whale's belly for Jonah, Goliath's shadow for David, the storm for the disciples, the disease for the lepers, doubt for Thomas, the grave for Lazarus, and the shackles for Paul. God gets us through this stuff. So let us remember to root for ourselves, knowing that we are provided with all we need to defeat any giants that stand in front of us. It's just up to us to use them. Let us sing of these things. We have been blessed in many ways, even when there are days we may doubt it. May we now respond so that through our work, others may feel blessed too. Let us gather up what we have brought to share. So just a couple of things. The book club, the book that Lois has ordered from the library, she's ordered 8 copies to come in, so she'll let us know when they arrive. The Light Between Oceans by M.L. Stedman. I went to go and I thought I could read a little, précis on the book, but it gave away too many of the parts of the plot. And Lois has read the book. I think she just sat down and read it just constantly, and Dawn just fed her chocolate, she was doing it. But anyway, she was terribly moved by it. So when the copies come in, pick up one. It's the Lord's Kitchen over at the Catholic Church that's this Friday, right? This Friday? Yeah, and the Bible study on the next not this Tuesday, but the next Tuesday, is all about those in supporting roles at the event of the Holy Week. So, and is there anything else that we need to talk about? Okay. Then let us pray. I'm not a big poetry fan, but sometimes we need to stretch ourselves. And Lent is a time for this, a time for concentrating on our business rather than the business of others. So I found this poem, and it's called Through Light and Shadow. And as you will recognize, it's based on Psalm 23. Through light and shadow I am led, I follow. Through the ins and outs, the ups and downs of these days. When my heart is failing, when my spirit rejoices, when I can barely put one foot in front of the other, still you beckon me on. When I stumble, you support me. When I can go no further, you carry me. Through light and shadow in death's dark veil, and on the mountain peaks you lead me. Through tangled webs on rocky ground, on smoother paths, through light and shadow you lead me. I follow. May I never walk alone. Companion God, like David and our ancestors before us, may we acknowledge your presence among us, and that you can be relied on for help each and every day, from the possibilities that a day begins with until its closing, and we rest our weary eyes and bodies. In the hours between, move our imaginations for how we can make changes, perhaps in our own lives, but also differences in the lives of others so that they may be better off. May children, youth, and their families have come back from their breaks rested and with stronger family ties. Keep safe those who are still traveling and bring them safely home. As spring announces itself tomorrow, let us look forward to its promises. New life, new hope, new dreams, new opportunities to live, to laugh, to love. Continue to let your spirit rest on those struggling with health issues, physical and emotional. We especially keep Arnold in our prayers. And others we may know of personally, privately, or some in the community. Bless us all as we care for one another in our deepest sorrows and in the times when we gladly celebrate, all knowing that your Spirit is by our side. Amen. And let us sing. God's blessing be yours, and well may it keep you. Christ's blessing be yours, and well may it heal you. The Spirit's blessing be yours, and well may it warm you today and every day of the week ahead.
Can't find it.
Ian, give us a solo, Ian. Nobody's got it.
I have,
9:59
I'm
maybe?
coming to somebody's rescue.
9:59?
Ian's gonna do it.
What?
Ian's doing it.
This is something that was ingrained in everybody's head from the time they were born. It is not a recognizable word. We could have sung it 5 times.
Go.
970 what? Okay, I've got it here. 967, is that it?
Sure. Next one. Next one. Yes, we can do that now.
You are, okay.
And this is just a thought after, several things that I've mentioned. Does that not mess up the whole day, right? Everything I said. Now you can just worry about that one. Sorry. You had your moment of peace, now you can go home and stew about it.